They asked her to serve drinks at her sister-in-law's bridal shower after she had gifted them the down payment for their house. Not a thank you, just whispers and smirks. She slipped a sealed envelope under the cake stand. No one noticed until the laughter stopped and faces turned pale. Too late. The moment Eloise signed that check, something shifted in the universe. She didn't feel it then, not when she was floating on the high of generosity, her pen gliding across paper as she drafted away $25,000 of her savings. It was meant to be a foundation, both literally and metaphorically, a cornerstone for Lucienne and her fiancé Pascal's future together. Her gift to family. She still remembered the weight of the cream envelope in her hands that Sunday dinner, how she tucked it between the dessert plates, waiting for the perfect moment. Her husband, Jean-Pierre, squeezed her knee under the table, a silent acknowledgement of what they were about to do. Back then, his touch still felt like partnership. "We have something for you too," she said, sliding the envelope across the polished mahogany toward Lucienne's perfectly manicured fingers. Her expression when she opened it, Eloise had replayed it 1,000 times. The widening eyes, the hand that flew to her mouth, the theatrical gasp that seemed practiced rather than genuine. "Oh my God, Jean-Pierre, is she serious?" "Not thank you, Eloise." Not addressed to her directly. Already she was becoming an accessory to her husband's family, not a person in her own right. "Dead serious," Jean-Pierre laughed. "Eloise wanted to do something special for you guys. She's been saving." She had been saving for 5 years for a writing retreat in Scotland she dreamed about since college. But family comes first. Isn't that what they always say? Pascal lifted his glass. To Eloise, the fairy godmother. Everyone laughed, glasses clinked, and for one shimmering moment, she felt seen, appreciated. 3 days later, they put an offer on a craftsman bungalow in the historic district. She found out via Instagram, a photo of Lucienne holding a sold sign captioned "Dreams do come true." #blessed, #new chapter. No mention of how those dreams materialized. No acknowledgement of the fairy godmother's wand. She told herself it didn't matter, that the joy of giving was enough. She smiled through the housewarming party where she was introduced as Jean-Pierre's wife to Pascal's extended family. She nodded appreciatively as Lucienne led tours, describing how they'd saved for years for this perfect starter home. The wedding planning consumed everything after that. Weekends disappeared into venue tours and cake tastings, events she learned about after they happened, through social media posts or casual mentions at family dinners. "Oh, we didn't want to bother you," Lucienne would say, eyes wide with practiced innocence. "You're so busy with work." She was busy with work. She'd built a consulting business from scratch while Jean-Pierre finished law school. The same business that generated the disposable income that now formed the foundation of their home. The first direct message she received from Lucienne in weeks was a group text to the bridal squad, her mother, sisters, and 3 college friends. And her, somehow included as an afterthought. "Ladies, bridal shower details finalized. Sunday, May 17th, 1 to 4 p.m. at Mother's house. Eloise, would you mind helping with drinks and cleanup? We need someone reliable to keep things running smoothly." She stared at her phone for so long the screen went dark. When she brought it up to Jean-Pierre that night, his response cut deeper than the request itself. "Just do it, Eloise. Don't cause drama. You know how important this is to my family." His family, not theirs, never theirs. She arrived at 11:30 that Sunday, as instructed. Wore the black dress Lucienne's mother suggested would be appropriate for someone helping out. She twisted her hair into a severe bun, removed her statement earrings, and applied minimal makeup. If they wanted her invisible, she would become a shadow. The table was already set with delicate china and crystal flutes when she arrived. Pink roses and peonies cascaded from centerpieces that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. A 3-tiered cake stand dominated the dessert table, topped with a confection so elaborate it looked more like architecture than food. Eloise, thank goodness. Lucienne's mother swooped in, pressing an apron into her hands. The ice needs arranging in the champagne buckets, for bottles in each. And when guests arrive, just circulate with the trays. Keep them full. Keep smiling. No hello, no how are you, just instructions. She nodded, tied the apron strings, and got to work. By the time guests arrived, she had transformed completely into what they needed, a service provider, invisible except when useful. The party swelled around her, voices rising in practiced excitement as gifts were opened, designer kitchenware, crystal vases, a weekend at a vineyard spa. With each extravagant present, she thought of what $25,000 could have bought instead of a down payment. What it meant to her versus what it apparently meant to them, nothing. More champagne over here, someone called, wiggling an empty glass in her direction without making eye contact. As she poured, she overheard Lucienne's maid of honor whispering to another bridesmaid. Can you believe Jean-Pierre's wife hovering like that? At least she's useful for something. The laughs that followed burned worse than tears. She moved mechanically for the next hour. Pour, smile, repeat, until something inside her, some last tether of patience or self-respect, simply snapped. During a lull, while everyone gathered for another gift-opening session, she slipped into the kitchen. From her purse, she withdrew a sealed envelope, white, unassuming, deadly in its simplicity. She'd been carrying it for days, waiting for courage or desperation to win out. Back in the dining room, she approached the cake display with steady hands belying her thundering heart. She slid the envelope under the cake stand's base, positioned perfectly so it would be found. But not immediately, not until she was ready, not until they had laughed and celebrated and dismissed her one final time. The tray in her hand suddenly felt significant, symbolic. She had given them the foundation for their dreams. They had given her servitude in return. The transaction was clear now, and soon, very soon, the real cost would be too. The champagne fizzed in crystal flutes as rose all day banners fluttered from every conceivable surface. The irony wasn't lost on her. This celebration drenched in pink while she moved through it dressed in funeral black, mourning the relationship she once thought they had. Lucienne, you absolutely glow. A woman in a blush shift dress embraced her sister-in-law, their cheeks pressing together for the third Instagram-ready photo in as many minutes. This is just perfection. Perfection. That was the word of the day, uttered with reverent sighs as guests toured the meticulously arranged space. Pink roses cascaded from hanging installations. Sequin table runners caught the afternoon light. Even the macarons had been custom-dyed to match the exact shade of Lucienne's wedding invitations. She circulated with practiced invisibility, refilling glasses and collecting discarded napkins. Their eyes slid over her like she was part of the catering staff, which effectively she was a role she had been assigned rather than offered. Ladies, let's gather for a toast. Lucienne's maid of honor clinked her glass with a silver spoon. The crowd hushed, forming a semicircle around the gift table where Lucienne perched on a blush velvet chair that resembled a throne. To our radiant bride, the maid of honor began, who has truly manifested her dream life. Dream man, dream house, dream everything. She maintained her position by the bar, hands folded over her serving tray, watching Lucienne's face glow with pleasure at the recognition of her perfect life, a life partially built on her sacrifice. And can we talk about that house? Another bridesmaid chimed in. Total #home goals. The universe definitely favors you, babe. The universe, not her brother's wife, not the woman who had transferred a significant portion of her savings account into their mortgage fund. The universe. Laughter rippled through the gathering as she mechanically wiped down the counter, collecting abandoned lipstick-stained glasses. The envelope beneath the cake stand seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat, a ticking reminder of what was to come. 3 days after signing that check, she'd sat across from her lawyer, Daniel, in his downtown office. Are you certain about this? He had asked, sliding the quiet title claim papers across his desk. Once we file, there's no going back. She remembered how the leather chair had creaked as she leaned forward. The money was never intended as a gift. It was an investment in family, in belonging. Her voice had hardened. They've made it clear I don't belong. So yes, I'm certain. Daniel had nodded slowly. This might blow things up. Relationships, holidays, everything. She had met his gaze steadily. They already did. Now, watching Lucienne hold court among her admirers, that conversation echoed in her mind. The legal paperwork filed. The wheels set in motion. The trap laid beneath sugared roses and fondant. Oh, Eloise. Lucienne's voice cut through her thoughts. She was gesturing toward her, champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her glass. Everyone, my sister-in-law is just being the absolute best today. Seriously, I need more help like her around. The women tittered appreciatively. One of them, a cousin she thought, raised her glass in her direction without quite making eye contact. To the help, she called out, clearly thinking herself witty. She smiled, polished an already gleaming tray. Didn't flinch. Lucienne's mother approached with an empty platter. The cucumber sandwiches need refreshing, she instructed, pressing the silver tray into her hands. And check the ice situation. Some of the glasses aren't properly chilled. She nodded, accepting the platter while noting how Lucienne's mother had never once used her name throughout the entire event, just directives, as though speaking to Siri or Alexa. In the kitchen, she arranged fresh sandwiches in concentric circles, each one precisely placed. The meticulousness of the task centered her, calmed the churning anxiety in her stomach. She listened to the celebration continuing in the other room. The theatrical gasps as gifts were unwrapped, the practiced exclamations of delight. When she returned, Lucienne was opening a box containing crystal champagne flutes. For your forever home, the gift-giver exclaimed. Forever home. The phrase hung in the air like a soap bubble. Beautiful and fragile. Soon to pop. She placed the refreshed tray on the table and resumed her position against the wall. From this vantage point, she could see the entire room, the cake stand on its pedestal, the envelope hidden beneath it, the women clustered in expensive dresses trading compliments like currency. Someone's child, a flower girl, perhaps, darted past the dessert table, her hand trailing dangerously close to the cake. Her heart leapt into her throat, but the girl moved on without disturbing anything. Not yet. The time wasn't right. The knot in her stomach tightened with every burst of laughter, every exclamation about Lucienne's good fortune. She checked her watch. 2 more hours of this performance remained. 2 more hours of smiling blankly while being treated as furniture. 2 more hours until the moment when everything would change. A bridesmaid approached. Empty glass extended. More, please, she said without looking at her, already turning back to her conversation. As she poured, she overheard snippets, down payment from somewhere, lucky break with that house, never could have afforded it otherwise. They knew. They all knew where the money had come from. Yet here she stood, demoted from benefactor to bartender. She placed the bottle back in its ice bucket with deliberate care. There was power in her silence, in her knowledge of what was coming. A sweet, patient power that would outlast their momentary celebration. The afternoon stretched on, a parade of pink excess and hollow compliments. She moved through it like a ghost, present but unseen. The weight of the legal papers beneath that cake grew heavier with each passing minute, with each dismissive glance, with each order barked in her direction. But she waited. She watched. Let them celebrate a little longer. Let them bask in the glow of their perceived perfection, their imagined security. Let them enjoy the sweetness before tasting what lay beneath. Because sometimes silence is sweeter than vengeance, and sometimes silence is the setup for the loudest fall. The minutes ticked by like a countdown to detonation. Gift after gift was unwrapped, each one accompanied by theatrical gasps and practiced gratitude. She'd been refilling champagne flutes mechanically for nearly 2 hours when Lucienne's mother announced it was time for cake. "Ladies, gather round," she trilled, gesturing toward the three-tiered masterpiece that had been commanding attention from its pedestal all afternoon. "Lucienne is going to say a few words before we indulge." Her pulse quickened. This was it, the moment everything would change. She steadied her breathing, gripping her serving tray a little tighter as the women arranged themselves in a semicircle around the dessert table. Lucienne glided to her position beside the cake, champagne flute raised, lips curved in that camera-ready smile she'd perfected over years of being the family favorite. She looked like a magazine cover, blush dress hugging her figure, hair cascading in artful waves, diamond engagement ring catching the light with every gesture. "I just want to thank everyone for making today so special," she began, voice pitched to that emotional frequency that signaled tears might be imminent. "When I think about this journey toward marriage, I'm overwhelmed by how blessed I am." A chorus of affirmative murmurs rippled through the audience. She remained still, watching her perform gratitude with Oscar-worthy precision. "My amazing family has supported me every step of the way," Lucienne continued, turning slightly to lock eyes with Jean-Pierre, who stood among the few male attendees near the kitchen entrance. She winked at him, an intimate gesture between siblings that somehow felt like another exclusion. Not once did her gaze travel to her, the shadow in black hovering at the room's periphery. "To my wonderful bridesmaids, my incredible mother, and everyone who's made this house a home, you are my everything." This house, the one built on her sacrifice, the one she was about to learn wasn't actually hers. What happened next seemed orchestrated by fate itself. Lucienne's cousin Regine, always slightly clumsy after a few drinks, leaned forward to adjust a lopsided napkin beside the cake stand. Her elbow bumped the pedestal, causing it to shift just enough. The white envelope, which had been waiting patiently beneath the stand's base, slipped free. It fluttered to the floor with unnatural grace, landing directly at Regine's feet like a deliberate messenger. "Hey, what's this?" Regine bent to retrieve it, holding the envelope up with furrowed brows. Did someone lose something? All eyes fixed on the mysterious paper. Her heart hammered against her ribs with such force she was certain everyone could hear it. "It probably fell from one of the gifts," Lucienne said, reaching for the envelope with casual interest. "Let me see." She took it without suspicion, her perfectly manicured fingers breaking the seal with careless efficiency. Eloise watched her expression transform as she unfolded the document inside, confusion giving way to disbelief, then horror, then rage in rapid succession. The color drained from her face so quickly it was as though someone had pulled a plug. Her hand dropped to her side, the papers dangling from suddenly limp fingers. What is this?" she whispered, voice stripped of its earlier performance quality. A murmur rippled through the gathering. Confusion spread like ripples in still water. Someone asked what was wrong. Another guest stepped closer to peer at the papers. Eloise placed her tray on the nearest table with deliberate calm and stepped forward into the circle for the first time that day. All eyes swiveled toward her, finally seeing her, really seeing her, perhaps for the first time. "It's paperwork," she said, her voice steadier than she'd anticipated. "A formal notice that the house isn't yours anymore." The silence that followed was absolute, complete, as though the universe itself had paused to witness this moment of reckoning. She heard a glass shatter against tile. Someone had dropped their champagne in shock. The sound crystallized the moment, marking the exact second when their perfect celebration shattered. "You can't be serious," Lucienne hissed, her composure cracking like thin ice. Her eyes darted to Jean-Pierre, seeking rescue or explanation. "Deadly," she replied, the single word carrying the weight of months of accumulated hurt and dismissal. She turned to face Jean-Pierre, whose expression had transformed into something between confusion and dawning horror. He took a step toward her, mouth opening to speak, but she cut him off before he could form words. "You told me to be quiet," she said, looking directly into his eyes. "To be useful. I was, until now." With methodical precision, she untied the apron they'd handed her upon arrival. She folded it neatly, placed it atop her abandoned serving tray, and straightened her shoulders. "You all treated me like a servant," she continued, sweeping her gaze across the assembled faces. Some confused, some embarrassed, some already calculating damage control. "But I was the one who built this castle. You just decorated it." Lucien's mother stepped forward, one hand extended as though to physically halt what was happening. "Eloise, this is hardly the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place," she interrupted. "When else would you actually be forced to see me?" Her husband finally found his voice. "Eloise, what have you done?" The betrayal in his tone struck her as almost comical, given the circumstances. "I've protected my investment," she replied simply. "The $25,000 was never a gift. It was a personal investment in property. My lawyer made that quite clear in those papers. You have 30 days to either buy me out at market value or vacate." The collective gasp that rippled through the room carried notes of scandal and disbelief. Someone whispered, "Is she allowed to do that?" loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not only allowed," she said, answering the whispered question directly. "It's already done." With that, she turned and walked toward the door, her steps measured and calm. Behind her, chaos erupted like a dam breaking, voices rising in confusion and outrage, questions hurled like stones, Lucien's sobs cutting through the commotion. She paused at the threshold, hand on the doorknob, and looked back one last time at the pink paradise now dissolving into discord. The cake stood untouched on its pedestal, a monument to celebrations that would never be completed. As she stepped outside into the afternoon sunshine, she heard Lucien's shriek rising above the confusion. "Jean-Pierre, do something." But it was too late for doing something. Too late for apologies or explanations or family loyalty. The time for those things had passed with every dismissive glance, every exclusion, every moment they'd relegated her to the role of servant rather than family. Behind her, their perfect celebration was cracking wide open, and for the first time in months, she could breathe. The drive home from the bridal shower was surreal. She floated through traffic lights and lane changes, windows down, breathing in air that somehow tasted different. Free. The afternoon sun cast everything in a golden glow that felt symbolic, illuminating a world she hadn't fully seen before, a world where she finally stood up for herself. At home, she changed out of the black dress, that uniform of invisibility, and pulled on jeans and a sweater in deep burgundy, a color she'd always loved, but Jean-Pierre once commented was a bit much for family gatherings. She made tea, opened her laptop, and waited. 3 hours and 27 minutes. That's how long it took for the hurricane to arrive. The door flew open with such force it bounced against the wall, leaving a nick in the plaster. Jean-Pierre stormed in, still wearing the blue button-down from the shower, though it was now untucked and wrinkled. His face was a storm front of rage and disbelief. "What the hell were you thinking?" he demanded, throwing his keys onto the counter with enough force to send them skidding into a vase. "You humiliated her in front of everyone, her friends, her family, everyone." She sipped her tea, the ceramic warm against her palms. "Hello to you too. This isn't funny, Eloise. Do you have any idea what you've done? The shower is ruined. Lucien's been crying for hours. My mother had to take anxiety medication." "You made me invisible," she replied, setting down her mug with deliberate calm. "For months. Every single day." He paced the living room like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair until it stood up in agitated spikes. This was supposed to be her special day, her one perfect celebration before the wedding. "And you turned it into some kind of revenge plot." "Interesting," she observed, "how quickly you jumped to her defense. How deeply you feel her humiliation." Yet when I was reduced to serving trays and cleaning duties, you told me not to cause drama. That's completely different, and you know it, he exploded, slamming his palm against the wall. This is about timing, Eloise. About appropriateness. About embarrassing our entire family in front of everyone they know. He ranted for nearly 10 minutes about social appearances, about family reputation, about the financial implications of her legal maneuver. Not once, not a single time, did he utter the word respect. Not once did he acknowledge how she had been treated. His concern was entirely for them, for appearances, for comfort, for the status quo she had so rudely disrupted. When he finally paused for breath, chest heaving, she rose from the couch and walked calmly to her laptop. "I'd like to play something for you," she said, opening an audio file she'd been compiling for weeks. "This was recorded at your mother's birthday dinner last month." She pressed play. His sister's voice filled the room. God, is Eloise wearing that same cardigan again? I swear she has the fashion sense of a librarian with a budget of $0. Laughter followed, including a chuckle she recognized as Jean-Pierre's own. His mother, well, at least she's generous with her checkbook, even if her wardrobe isn't. Lucienne's voice, dripping with condescension, the ultimate doormat with a checkbook. Did you see how she offered to help with the floral arrangements after I told her the bridesmaid dresses were all assigned? Like, honey, you're not in the wedding party. More laughter. Jean-Pierre's voice in the background, not defending her but joining in with a comment about how she meant well. She stopped the recording. Jean-Pierre stood frozen, color draining from his face. "Here's another," she said, pulling up text messages on her screen and turning it toward him. "A group chat between your siblings. Screenshots forwarded to me by your cousin's wife, who'd been accidentally included and felt uncomfortable. Lucienne, she just Venmo'd me $300 for bridal shower expenses without me even asking. Jean-Pierre's brother, the bank of Eloise strikes again. Lucienne, she's not family, she's funding. Should we start calling her the First National Bank of sister-in-law?" Jean-Pierre stared at the screen, then at her, then back at the screen. "Where did you get these?" he whispered. "Does it matter?" she countered. "What matters is that they exist. What matters is that this is how your family speaks about me when they think I can't hear." "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, voice smaller now. "Because you already chose a side," she replied simply. "I just finally chose mine." She reached into the drawer of the side table and withdrew a cream-colored envelope, twin to the one that had disrupted the shower, though with different contents. She extended it toward him. "What's this?" he asked, not reaching for it. "Divorce papers," she said. "I've been your peacekeeper. Your sponsor. Your silence. I'm done." He took the envelope as though it might burn him. "Eloise, wait. We need to talk about this. We can fix things." "I had no idea they were saying these things." "I can talk to them." "It's too late for talking," she interrupted, moving past him toward the bedroom. She pulled out the suitcase she'd already packed that morning before the shower, knowing exactly how this day would end. "What are you doing?" He followed her, panic rising in his voice. "You can't just leave." "I can," she corrected him, zipping the case closed. "And I am. This is insane. Where will you even go?" "I booked a room at the Parkview. After that, I'm looking at apartments closer to my office." She checked her watch. "My Uber will be here in 5 minutes. Eloise, please." His voice cracked. "We can work this out. I'll make them apologize. I'll make them respect you." She turned to face him fully. "You can't make someone respect you, Jean-Pierre. Either they do or they don't. Your family made their choice. You made yours when you stood still while they erased me piece by piece." She lifted her suitcase from the bed. "So now I'm removing myself completely." "You're destroying everything," he whispered. "Our marriage. Lucienne's wedding. The house they've been living in for months. How can you be so cold?" She paused at the bedroom door and met his gaze. "I'm not cold. I'm finally warm again. There's a difference." Her phone buzzed, the Uber arriving downstairs. She rolled her suitcase toward the front door, collected her purse and laptop. Jean-Pierre followed, still clutching the divorce papers, looking lost in his own home. Eloise, he tried one last time. What am I supposed to tell everyone? The truth, she suggested, though I doubt you'll recognize it anymore. She didn't cry as she left. She didn't scream or slam doors. She simply walked out with her spine straighter than it had been in years, with a certainty in her step that had long been missing. The elevator doors closed on the image of her husband standing in their doorway, looking suddenly small and confused, a man confronted with consequences he never anticipated because he'd never bothered to see the damage being done. As she settled into the back seat of the waiting car, she felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction or vindication or even anger, just a profound sense of lightness, as though she'd set down a burden she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand unencumbered. This wasn't revenge. It was release. The Parkview Hotel became her sanctuary for exactly 7 days. 7 days of room service breakfasts, of working remotely from a desk overlooking the city park, of sleeping diagonally across a king-sized bed that belonged only to her. 7 days during which her phone vibrated so incessantly she finally silenced all notifications except those from clients and her lawyer. The first call came barely an hour after she checked in. Jean-Pierre, his voice a strange mixture of anger and pleading, "You need to come home. We need to talk about this like adults." She let it go to voicemail. The second call came at 11:43 that night. Lucien, words slurring slightly, oscillating between tearful apologies and vicious accusations. "You've ruined everything. How could you do this to family? We never meant to hurt you." By morning, there were 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. By the end of day 2, those numbers had nearly tripled. Jean-Pierre's mother left voicemails that started with stiff formality. "Eloise, this is Marianne. I think we need to discuss the situation," and devolved into barely contained fury. "You vindictive little gold digger, after everything we've done for you." Lucien's fiancé Pascal called exactly once. His message was unexpectedly sincere. "I had no idea what was happening. I'm sorry you were treated that way, but please, this is our home." She forwarded every contact attempt to Daniel, her lawyer, who responded to each with the same clinical precision. "The documents are binding. The gift has been legally revoked. All further communications should be directed to this office." On day 3, the threats began. "We'll sue you for every penny. You'll never work in the city again. Everyone will know what kind of person you really are." On day 4, the tone shifted to desperate negotiation. Lucien texted, "We can work something out. Monthly payments? Interest? Please just talk to us." By day 5, the sympathy card emerged. Lucien called, sobbing, "We don't have anywhere else to go. You're making us homeless. Is that what you want?" She broke her silence with a single text sent not to her but to her lawyer to relay, "I'm willing to sell them the house at full market value. No discount, no grace period on payments." The response came back through Daniel. "They're asking for terms, installments, family consideration." "No," she replied. "Full price or vacate in 30 days. They didn't have it. Not without her. That reality seemed to be sinking in for all of them now, how much they had relied on her generosity while simultaneously diminishing her. On the 7th day, she signed a 6-month lease on a sunlit apartment overlooking the river, 15 minutes from her office and 40 minutes from their old neighborhood. She hired movers to collect her designated belongings from the condo, scheduled for a time when Jean-Pierre would be at work. The notifications continued their digital assault, but their frequency began to wane. Desperation gave way to resignation, then to bitterness. Through carefully curated updates from a single former colleague who remained neutral, she learned that Pascal had packed his things and left 3 weeks after the bridal shower meltdown. Creative differences about their future was the official explanation that circulated. The wedding was postponed indefinitely. Jean-Pierre moved back in with his mother. Temporarily, he told everyone, just until things settled down. The condo went on the market, priced below value for a quick sale. The most telling transformation happened on social media. Lucienne's Instagram account, once a meticulously curated showcase of her perfect life, went silent. No wedding planning updates, no home renovation projects, no artfully arranged brunch photos. The house they had briefly called home, her investment, her leverage, went into default. They vacated without properly winterizing the pipes. A neighbor called about a water leak from burst pipes. After the insurance claim and repairs, she listed it with a realtor who specialized in quick turnover properties. It sold within a month. In late June, she heard through the dwindling grapevine that Lucienne was living in a rental apartment on the unfashionable side of town, telling anyone who would listen that she had been scammed by her vindictive sister-in-law, that she had tricked them into financial ruin. She never responded, not to the rumors, not to the increasingly infrequent messages, not to Jean-Pierre's final plea to at least talk, for closure. Her silence wasn't calculated cruelty. It was self-preservation. Her dignity didn't need to argue its case. It needed distance. It needed to heal. With the divorce proceedings smooth and the house matter settled, she took the vacation she had originally been saving for when she wrote that $25,000 check. 2 weeks in Scotland, alone, hiking windswept hills, writing in centuries-old pubs, sleeping in castle-converted hotels where no one knew her name or her story. On her last night in Edinburgh, she sat in a small restaurant overlooking the city lights, savoring a glass of whiskey that the server had described as not for beginners. Her phone buzzed with a message from an old college friend who had heard rumors and wanted the real story. "Are you okay?" she asked. "Do you miss them, the family you almost had?" She actually laughed out loud, earning curious glances from nearby diners. "Miss them?" "No," she typed back. "I missed myself. And I finally found her again." Later that night, standing in front of the bathroom mirror in her hotel room, she studied her reflection with newfound clarity. The woman looking back at her seemed different, eyes brighter, shoulders straighter, and easy confidence in the curve of her smile that had been absent for too long. She recognized this woman. She was the one who had built a business from scratch, who had valued family and connection, who had trusted her own worth. She was someone they had never really known, the real Eloise beneath the checkbook, beneath the accommodating silence, beneath the designated role of useful background character. They never bothered to look beyond what she could give them, never cared to discover who she actually was. And now it was too late. She turned away from the mirror and packed her suitcase for the flight home, not to make amends, not to rebuild bridges, but to continue constructing the life she deserved, free from those who had taken without giving, who had diminished without recognizing the cost. Some things, once broken, deserved to stay that way. 6 months after Scotland, she found herself at a coffee shop downtown, laptop open, finishing a proposal for a new client. Her business had expanded. 3 new employees, a renovated office space, and a waiting list of clients attracted by their reputation for integrity and results. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her professional life flourished precisely when she stopped diminishing herself for others. The bell above the door chimed, and she glanced up reflexively. Her stomach tightened. Regine, Lucienne's cousin, the one whose elbow had nudged the cake stand that day, stood at the counter ordering. She considered packing up quickly, avoiding the inevitable awkwardness, but something kept her rooted to her chair. She was done running, done hiding, done making herself smaller for other people's comfort. When she turned and saw her, her expression cycled through surprise, embarrassment, and something like curiosity. After a moment's hesitation, she approached her table. "Eloise," she said, clutching her coffee cup like a shield, "it's been a while." Eloise nodded, closing her laptop. "It has." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Finally, she asked the question that had clearly been consuming her. Can I ask why you did it? Why that day in front of everyone? This was the first time anyone from her husband's family had asked her directly. Not accused, not assumed, just asked. People think revenge is loud, she said quietly, explosive, messy. They expect screaming matches and dramatic confrontations. She slid into the chair across from her, drawn in despite herself. But sometimes it's quiet, clean, and perfectly timed. She wrapped her hands around her cooling mug. I didn't ruin the bridal shower, Regine. I just let it reveal itself. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? That celebration, that perfect pink party, what was it built on? Barbed kindness, masked insults, and me. She met her gaze steadily. My money, my labor, my silence. Understanding dawned slowly across her face. She had been there after all, had witnessed how they treated her, even if she'd never intervened. When I removed myself from the equation, everything crumbled. Not because I sabotaged anything, just simple subtraction. I never knew, she murmured, about the recordings, the texts. Jean-Pierre told everyone afterward, but she trailed off, perhaps realizing how hollow that sounded. You never asked, she finished for her. None of you did. You saw what you wanted to see. The helper, the quiet one, the background figure serving drinks and arranging flowers. Lucien's wedding is officially cancelled, she offered, as though this might matter to her. Her fiancé Pascal left her for a bartender from his office. Jean-Pierre is seeing a therapist. Eloise nodded, acknowledging the information without revealing whether it affected her one way or another. And you, she asked. Are you okay? She smiled, genuinely. I'm better than okay. I'm whole again. Regine studied her with newfound attention. You look different. Lighter somehow. That's what happens when you stop carrying other people's expectations. She hesitated, then leaned forward. Everyone's talking, you know. Not about you, like you might think about them. About Lucien especially. I know, Eloise said simply. She's been telling people you scammed her, that you tricked them about the house money, also expected. But nobody's really buying it. Regine twisted her cup nervously. Her bridesmaids, they saw how she treated you that day. Word spread. And then when everything fell apart so quickly after, people put it together. She hadn't known this part. Hadn't cared enough to track the social fallout beyond what directly affected her. The knowledge brought no particular satisfaction. Just a quiet acknowledgement that truth eventually emerges, with or without explanation. I never looked back, she said. Never explained. Never needed to. Well, it worked. She offered a rueful smile. You reclaimed your story. On your terms. They sat in silence for a moment, the afternoon light slanting through the window, casting everything in warm amber. Eventually, she gathered her things to leave, but paused before standing. Can I ask you one more thing? What actually happened that day, from your perspective? Eloise considered her question, not out of obligation to explain herself, but because she wanted to articulate it for herself, if not for her. Sometimes, she said carefully, you just have to let them eat cake and then read what's underneath it. Her lips quirked in surprised appreciation of the metaphor. That's not revenge, she added. That's truth. Served cold. After Regine left, she remained at the table, watching pedestrians stream past the window, lives intersecting briefly then continuing on their separate paths, like she's had with Jean-Pierre's family. 2 weeks later, she received a handwritten note in the mail. Not from Regine, but, surprisingly, from her mother-in-law, Jean-Pierre's mother. Just 3 lines. I was wrong about you. I'm sorry for what we did. It was too little, too late. She didn't respond. Not out of lingering anger, but because there was simply nothing left to say. Some endings don't require epilogues. At the 1-year mark of what would have been Lucien's wedding day, she donated the full $25,000, the amount she'd originally given them, to a women's shelter downtown. Not as penance, not as performance, but because it felt right. A reclamation of the intention behind that original gift, to build something meaningful, something that would last. Her new home has no pink anywhere. No roses, no sequins, no champagne flutes. Instead, it has space for growth, for authenticity, for the unvarnished truth of who he is. The bookshelves overflow with travel guides for places she's finally visiting. The walls display art that speaks to her, not chosen to impress others. Occasionally, she hears snippets about Jean-Pierre and his family. He's dating someone new. Lucienne moved to another state. Life continues as it always does. But she no longer orbits their sun. She became her own. She didn't destroy their perfect world. She simply stepped outside of it and watched as it collapsed under the weight of its own hollow center. She didn't break their party. She just let it end. And in that ending, she found her beginning. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.